know yourself. All right. And what do I mean by that? I've said it plenty of times before. Everybody looking at me like you're cuckoo, you're crazy, whatever the case is, right? Every spiritual system teaches you this. You can go into the Yoruba system, they talk about the Ora. You could go into the Igbo system, they talk about the Chi. All of these systems tell you that you yourself are a god. Okay, that is what it is. You yourself are a god. You are a manifestation of the divine. You're the manifestation of nature. You're the manifestation of all the universe colliding together at one point within inside of history to produce a specific nature inside of you for you to actually fulfill a purpose here on earth. Okay, so what it is trying to get to know who you are and what is your purpose and what exactly have you come here to do to benefit humanity as a whole. All right. So each one of those spiritual systems went into Gnosis. Okay. And in order to get into Gnosis and to be transcending and becoming a deity, and when we're talking about deity, I know this is a bit, again, this is why I don't want to lose people with spookism, okay? Because in religion, we hear about God, 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 this superhuman, supernatural being, okay? In Kemetic science, spirituality, and philosophy, there is no such thing as that style of deity, that style of God. There is nothing, there is...
Within the Kemetic system, there is no one archetypal, all-bearing Godhead.
I'll get into that, but I really want to say there is no such thing as what we perceive as a deity sitting in the sky on a chair. There is no deity who is above, beyond nature itself, okay? There's nothing like that. The only way that we get to know about a divine or a god or a deity or a divine principle is by studying oneself and studying nature. Or the universe. And that's the only way we come to a conclusion that there is a divine principle. This is going into philosophy and understanding metaphysics, okay? That is principles behind nature.
Sorry to cut you, Bob, but I had Dali and Adolfo on last week, and we were going into African spiritual systems. And within the spiritual systems that he found, he'd done a lot of research. And within those spiritual systems, he found that God essentially is nature and nature is God. Is that the same in Kemet?
100%.
Right.
100%. 100%. There is nothing beyond nature itself.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
100%. How did they come to that conclusion?
Again, that's what I'm saying. We deal with inside of Kemetic, we do, because I'm trying my very best not to separate Kemetic spirituality, okay, which we will call the cultists, okay, from its philosophy and its natural science, okay? All three of those things are wrapped up into one thing. The problem with religion today, okay, they will only give you the cultic side, what we consider to be the religious side, the dogmatic side, the physical manifestation of what the philosophy and the science teaches. But they just cut that away, sever that. So all you know about is a God, and you just think to yourself, what is that? What is that? What do you mean by God created the heavens and the earth and so forth? Like, when you really deep it, it doesn't make any sense. What we're talking about from a Kemetic side of things, we're talking about looking into the universe, studying astrology, astronomy, astrophysics. How did the universe, cosmology and cosmogony, how did the universe come into existence? Anthropology, how did human beings come into existence? Okay, and the principle, the beginning principles of that is that which we call a divine principle, aka a deity. Is to do with metaphysics. But once you strip away the metaphysics side of things or philosophy from it, and you just present a God, it just doesn't connect. It doesn't make any sense at all. So I really want to be very careful and cautious when we're speaking today about spirituality and deities and gods and so forth, because I don't want to be misconstrued into thinking for the people to believe that Kemetics or the ancient Egyptians believed in spook gods or believed full stop, because they never dealt with beliefs. That's one thing I just need to clarify and make sure everybody knows. The beginning, the foundation, as I said, of Kemetic spiritualism or spirituality is something called Gnosis, and that is to know. That is science. That's all they dealt with, was science. And the science of spirituality is the science of the inner man, or the psyche, or the working of one's psychology.
So I would say for the audience and for people to kind of understand or attempt to understand, they would have to strip what they think is God away from their psyche to understand another people's or another people's way of viewing what quote unquote God actually is. I kind of find that when I speak about African spiritual systems, people tend to view it via their own lens. So they try to comprehend the system that they don't know via their own understanding. And I'm saying, no, to understand it, you're probably going to have to strip what you think God is away from your psyche to actually try and get something from it.
100%. 100%. 100%. Because now that's one difference between Egyptology and Kemetology. There's a whole school of thought where Egyptology is the study of Egypt from a Eurocentric perspective. Okay, because when we come and we study something, we have to acknowledge we come with our own biases and our own presumptions. Whereas in the school of Kemetology, right, we study it from the indigenous African perspective of what the people themselves had to say. So that's why we give and we show reverence and respect to those people they call the ancient Egyptians by not calling it by a foreign name, right, which came via the Greeks, and then it was Latinized, and then it was anglicized later on, and present that. We don't do that. We come from it from the actual African, indigenous perspective. What did the people themselves think? What did the people themselves say? And how did they present themselves? Okay, and we have to strip away all of our biases, all of our presumptions, and come as a clean slate and kind of absorb their information and kind of give it back to our audience who are listening now to how they presented the information.
So then what would be some of the core principles then of Kemetic thought, philosophy, spirituality? What would be some of the core things that they would have?
Okay, so at the core itself, all right, is the principle of Ma'at. Okay, the principle Ma'at. So most of us, I would love, you know how we do it on Titans TV. We have the whole slideshows, the images, the presentations, and so forth. I would love to have that right now for you, but unfortunately, I don't. So if any of you guys have any questions or anything else, or if I said a certain thing that doesn't sound right to you, simply do a little timestamp and say, Callum, I don't understand this bit here. Can you just expand on this? And later on, I will review the comment section. And I'll try to provide some more information. I'll try to provide the sources. Because, of course, on Titans TV, we have a mantra as such. And it goes a bit like this. If you are truthful, then present your evidence.
Right.
Present your evidence. So, one of the first things we learn about in Kemet is Ma'at. And that is really the spiritual system. That's really the science. That's really the philosophy within inside of Kemet itself. Okay. And that is Ma'at. And I'll explain.
What is Ma'at? Who is Ma'at?
What is Ma'at? Okay. So Ma'at actually comes from the root word Ma'at. Ma'at is literally is to see. And to see is to know. Okay. And that is the root of itself, but it goes further. It's a polysemantic word, meaning it has various different concepts attached to it. So Ma'at also means righteousness. It also means reciprocity. It also means to be just. It also means to be truthful. It also means to be balanced. So it's a lot of concepts tied into one. And this is kind of like a funny thing with inside of Kemet. It was never linear as such. There were so many things just circular, just tied in together as a compound. And inside of that itself, again, the very first principle is to know. We want to investigate. We want to utilize a scientific methodology. So if, like, the Kemetic people were very curious people. So they studied everything. They studied nature. They studied the animals. They wanted to get a deeper understanding of their environment, their surroundings. As I said, the very first principle of Gnosis is man, know thyself, know the mysteries of the universe. That means your environment. And then only then you will come to a fuller understanding of what is
the
the
reason
divine.
why? Is that the reason why when you look on the writings of Kemet, you will find many natural symbols, as in symbols that you find in nature, like animals or feathers or things like that? Are you telling me that they got their information, or the reason why they wrote the way they wrote is because they were inspired by nature?
100%, 100%. Every single thing, like, is very, is wonderful. Once you actually study the language, you will see how incredibly deep and symbolic these people actually were. Okay, because they would observe nature itself and create a whole system of symbolism out of the things that they find in nature that was universal and could continue throughout a long space of time, a very long space of time. Like even today now, we can understand the Egyptian hieroglyphs by simply observing the Egyptian environment and the sounds that certain things actually made and the appearance of certain. Let me give you an example of this. For example, like this is just simple stuff. Like, for example, they would actually call a cat by the sound that it makes. So I'm going to ask you, what is the sound that we commonly ascribe to a cat? Like the sound it makes.
Meow.
Meow. That's literally the name for a cat. What is the name for a dog?
A wolf.
There you go. What is the name for a lion, for example? The roar, the roaring sound. Exactly. So we can literally understand understand what the Kemetics actually had to say by literally observing nature, and that's exactly what they did, because they themselves call their language, the speech of the gods. Okay, and I don't want to be I don't want to be spooky with it, because it's literally saying the speech of nature. What is nature trying to express to us? And that is literally it. And their system, and I'll just give you a little quick breakdown of their writing system for those people who are actually interested. Their system was broken up into 3 different parts. They had, for example, for one glyph or one letter to say, the one letter would literally represent an alphabet. It also had a secondary meaning. It also represented a sound, a phoneme. What does the sound actually make? Another one, for example, is third aspect of a glyph itself would be an ideograph, meaning what idea does it present? So for example, let me give you something brief. They have a lips, okay, lips. And that there as an alphabet represented the letter R. But it also, as a phoneme, the sound Ra. Then it also represented, for the third aspect of it, the concept or the idea of speech, the idea of speech itself. And then even further on, when you actually learn more about the Egyptian philosophy itself, is it represented the creator, because God itself was called Ra. And why Ra? Because everything came. Okay.
Oh.
Anytime you want to create something, okay, in this world.
Your connection's a little bit bad, bro.
I
think your connection's a bit bad.
You know where you live in the valleys? The valleys? I'm trying to fix it. Yeah, I can't even fix it right now. Oh, sugar. I can't even see myself. Am I still showing?
No, we can't see anything.
Okay, let me see if I can come back in again. Let's see.
No problem. Sorry about that, family. Brother Kalam will be right back in. Stay tuned. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Kalam will be right back in. All right, he's coming back. Sway the Sappho just joined. What's going on, bro?
Hey, we back for the 2nd time in a row. Oh, man. All right, let's go. Let's go.
Yeah, so go on, continue.
So yeah, so I was just simply explaining the deepness of the actual system, the writing system itself, the alphabets. It was a very symbolic system that really looked at nature and tried to explain nature in a very universal and time continuous way. where we could still understand even though it's been lost for, let's say, 1,000 years, we can still look into nature and still see the words and the expressions and what nature actually was trying to explain to us to really understand the hieroglyphs that was lost for so long.
Right. Okay. So you see, so when I studied the philosophies and stuff in the Nile Valley, and I also studied the Abrahamic religions, I found similarities. More so, so this is where my thinking went. So when I look into the Abrahamic religions, you will find, you just mentioned Ma'at. Ma'at has 42, let's say 42 principles or 42 confessions, let's say 42 negative confessions, or however you want to call it. And when you read those 42 confessions of Ma'at, you can actually find within there the makings of the 10 Commandments from the Bible. Would I be correct? Or
I would say that it's very difficult to say that. It's very difficult to say that. And the reason why I say it's very difficult to say that is you can definitely see the similarities inside of it. But there are stark differences. There are stark differences. What do I mean by stark differences? So, for example, we have the 10 Commandments, okay? Thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do that, thou shalt not do this, okay? Whereas in the negative confessions, so to speak, it's not that there is somebody else commanding you and telling you what you shall and shall do like you're a little child, okay? It's more of an autocratic way of looking at things. I am in control of my own destiny. And I'm saying that I have not done these things. I acknowledge, again, let's see if I can just backtrack a little bit, because we are presented with the 42 negative confessions as though that is the end all and be all. But what most people don't understand, because they're not initiated with inside of the temple school systems where you learn the spiritual aspects of it, the latter stage of it, there is something else that precedes it with inside of the initiatic process of the 40, when you get up to the 42 negative confessions. And before that, you have something called the virtues. Okay, the virtues. You first need to know what is a virtue to understand what is a vice. Okay, it's the law of polarities. In order for there to be good, there must be bad. In order for it to be light, there must be darkness. So in order for there to be vices, as in things that are negative that you shall not do, you must first know what you shall do or you should do itself.
Shall do.
Exactly. And and they would have these things to say, I have, for example, fed the poor. Those who done so many grand and great deeds. For example, I have given water to somebody. I have given those who don't have a boat or passage across the river a boat to go across the river and so forth. So there was all these things that comes before the 42 negative confessions. Get up. So I want to make everybody know that before 42 negative confessions, there is something that precedes it, which is the virtues. One must know what it is to actually be virtuous within inside of the Kemetic system. And then yes, there is the 42 negative confessions. And again, the 42 negative confessions is a symbolic attestation to what is seen as viceful throughout the whole Kemetic Empire. And what do I mean by that? Within inside of the Kemetic Empire, there are 42 different nomes, or what they call the sepats. Okay, 42 different nomes, starting from Upper Egypt all the way down to Lower Egypt. Okay, and each one of those states, for example, would have something that is a vice. For example, taking food away from children. That was a vice, and you would say, I have not done such a vice. I have not taken food away from the children and so forth. And these things actually happen. These things were said on your behalf once you have been deceased, meaning once you died. Okay, there was a process of judgment where the whole community across your town and across Egypt itself would put you on trial, so to speak, and your son or somebody on your behalf to be classified as somebody who lived outside of Ma'at. Okay, and this is important with inside of ancient Egypt. You wanted to be buried with a good name. Okay, because if you was not, if you
Right.
did not have a good name, and if you was not ma'akhiru, meaning true of voice, okay, you were not allowed to be ceremoniously buried. You were not allowed. Your name was not
Right.
allowed to be carried on.